Thomas E. Scherr. Thomas E. Scherr is now 70 years old. So it's time for some things to be told. For the better part of 7 decades, I've known him. So, of course, some of my early memories may be a little dim. Other events and happenings are still clear as glass, and to many of us, there's just no way we'd ever forget Tom Ass. So here's an ode to the life of the man, and I'll try to remember things as best I can. For the first 10 years I knew Tom, they passed without much ado. Early school years went by, and we didn't have a clue. We were just all kids and do things kids like. We ran around like crazy and smashed up our bikes. Then later in school, there was an encounter that started a fire. Thomas was transfixed by a girl named Hannelore Meyer. She and her cousin joined us in grammar school around 5th grade. They spoke no English, but she was a precocious maid. I'm not sure she was his first, but she kissed a few boys and ignited a thirst. Tom, of course, was front and center. He tried to learn German and become her mentor. Puppy love was good at 10 years' time, but more would come as we complete this rhyme. Move on to grades 6, 7, and 8, and things started to happen that we could not anticipate. Tom's personality was always top 10, and for some of our classmates, he was the mother hen. We started to discover that girls were not so bad, but we had no idea what made them happy or sad. So, when we were not thinking about relationships and such, we had basketball and baseball to occupy time much. We went to NBA games on the city bus. The Nats at the War Memorial were readily available to us. We sat in the upper seats for almost no cost, and the games were amazing, whether they won or lost. Dolph Schlegel and Kerr, Costello and Greer, those Nat players were heroes and in our hearts dear. We played on the pastime teams for years since we were small. In winter, it was basketball, and summer, baseball. Our early years were mostly carefree and fun. We enjoyed our lives in school and even some nuns. Rose Bernard, John Francis, Concepta, and more. We went to school and did all our chores. We learned Latin prayers from Sister de Sales. She was strict and rigid and stayed on our tails. To this day, we can remember many of these prayers. If we repeat them now, all we get is stares. Sister Jeremiah went after Tom one time, and she was tough. It seems she didn't think he was reverent enough. She threatened to make his face a bloody mess, and just like the Lord's in his time of distress. Into high school in 1962 we went, the start of 4 years of trying to figure out what it all meant. More interest in females with much to learn. One of our genius friends had an answer to our concern. He subscribed to a magazine so we could know all the things of interest that Catholic girls don't show. But the genius had it sent to his grandmother's house. It didn't take long. His parents nearly killed the louse. Later, there was beer for us boys in Grandma Schwanz's shed. A couple of quarts would go right to our heads. We'd sneak in there quietly on our tiptoes and leave in a flurry of arms and elbows. Assumption school dances on Fridays in the summer, but we never got any smarter, only dumber. High school dances after basketball games, Tom would always be interested in the dames. In high school, what made Tom's heart throb was watching episodes of Love That Bob. Our core group included Ralph, me, Albert, and Dave. We always were together and would sometimes misbehave. Ralph was known for his prank phone calls. He'd get the guys riled at the local pool halls. We did all the things you do in high school, prom dates and more, and just act like fools. There was a big problem in our final year. To some, it's a memory we hold quite dear. It seems someone got the answer to our religion exam, which would make the test a complete, total sham. Well, it didn't go well when the nuns found out. They greeted us that day with snarls and shouts. But before we knew it, high school was over and done. So after 1966, we found different ways to have fun. We all went off to college and started out in life. Soon we got jobs and eventually a wife. Then without warning, our families started to grow. And often we were seen with our kids in tow. Our jobs and families took much of our time. So there's not much to report about those years in this rhyme. We all had stories of our families and such, but our experiences were all similar, pretty much. There were baptisms, communions, and birthdays for sure. Our kids grew up and it seemed like a blur. 30 years went by before we knew it. And we can't believe we somehow survived and got through it. Funerals have become a big part of life now, and we know nobody gets out of here alive anyhow. A dozen years or so, Tom received a call from on high. It seemed the Lord thought he could be the guy. An ordained deacon. Who would have thought? His past transgressions were reduced to naught. Now, I'm not saying he's no longer a sinner. He just decided to join the team of the winner. And so life goes from young to old, and along the way there's usually stories to be told. At his advanced age, I hope he can recall the good, the bad, the ugly, and all. We're not trying to cope with being retired. We all worked for years, but ultimately got fired. With mergers and buyouts, we became surplus. So we took what we could and we left without fuss. It's funny how you can totally lose interest the closer you get to eternal rest. The golden years have brought some issues with health, and we're all trying to figure out how to keep some of our wealth. So Tom's beginning life's last quarter. We hope his time doesn't get any shorter. Happy 7-0 to good old Tom. We hope the next 30 years for you are the bomb. Happy birthday, you old codger. Thank you.